Hey guys, you are tuned in to RES Stories. I physically neutralized 4 armed imposters in 30 seconds after they tried to force my 22-year-old son into an unmarked van. They demanded entry to my federal weapons vault, thinking they could intimidate a college grad with fake badges and hollow threats. But when I flashed my U.S. Marshals star, their false arrest attempt instantly turned into a federal felony. They messed with the wrong father. This is how it happened. The gravel crunched beneath the tires of my black pickup truck as I turned off the main county road and onto the long, winding driveway that led to my property. It was 6:30 p.m., and the sun was just beginning to dip below the tree line, casting long, stretching shadows across the lawn. Most people driving home from work are thinking about dinner or the game on television. I am not most people. My eyes automatically flicked to the rearview mirror, checking for a tail that wasn't there, then scanned the perimeter of the property as the house came into view. I had chosen this place specifically for its sightlines. It was set back from the road, surrounded by dense timber on 3 sides, with a clear view of the approach. It was the kind of place a man buys when he wants to be left alone, when he has seen enough of the world's ugliness to last 2 lifetimes. But as I pulled up to the garage, my internal radar, honed by 20 years of hunting fugitives, began to ping. There were tire tracks on the edge of the grass, fresh ones. Mud churned up where someone had made a hasty 3-point turn. I killed the engine and stepped out. The silence of the evening was heavy, missing the usual sounds of the local wildlife. I walked around the front of the truck, my boots silent on the concrete, and that was when I saw him. Caleb was standing on the front porch. At 22, my son was not a child. He was 6 feet tall, broad-shouldered, a former varsity linebacker who had just graduated with honors in structural engineering. He was a man who knew how to handle himself. But in that moment, in the fading light, he looked rattled. His face was flushed a deep crimson, his jaw set so tight I could see the muscle jumping beneath the skin. He was gripping the railing of the porch with white knuckles. I did not run to him. Panic is contagious, and in my line of work, calm is a weapon. I walked up the steps, my eyes scanning the windows, the bushes, the tree line. "Report," I said, my voice low and steady. Caleb took a deep breath, exhaling it through his nose like a fighter trying to lower his heart rate between rounds. "We had visitors, Dad. About 20 minutes ago. A van and a sedan. 4 guys." "Cops?" I asked, though I already suspected the answer. "They tried to look like it," Caleb said, his voice hard. "They wore those tactical vests, the kind you buy at a surplus store. Had badges on chains around their necks. They banged on the door like they were serving a no-knock warrant." I unlocked the front door and ushered him inside, locking the deadbolt behind us. "What did they want?" "The safe," Caleb said, pacing the living room floor. "The big one in the basement. They said there was a new community ordinance regarding the storage of military-grade assets in a residential zone. They demanded I open the garage and give them the code to the vault for a mandatory inventory audit." I felt a cold chill settle in my gut. My vault did not contain hunting rifles. It contained specialized equipment issued to a Chief Deputy U.S. Marshal. The fact that anyone knew it existed was a problem. The fact that they tried to bully my son into opening it was a declaration of war. "What did you tell them?" Caleb stopped pacing and looked me in the eye. "I told them to show me a warrant signed by a federal judge. I told them I knew my rights, and that as a legal resident of this property, I wasn't consenting to any search." "And?" The leader, a guy with a neck tattoo creeping up out of his collar, got in my face. He put his hand on his baton. He said, "Listen, kid, this is a compliance check. You don't want to start your adult life with an obstruction charge. We can do this the easy way, or we can drag you downtown and sort it out in a cell." He threatened to arrest you? He threatened to hurt me, Caleb corrected. He said accidents happen during non-compliance. I told him to get off the property or I was calling the sheriff. They lingered for another minute, trying to stare me down. Then the leader got a call on his radio and they bailed. I nodded, feeling a swell of pride for the young man standing before me. He had stood his ground against 4 men who made their living on intimidation. You did good, Caleb. You did exactly right. Who were they, Dad? They weren't local PD. I know the deputies. These guys were dirty. They looked like thugs playing dress-up. That is exactly what they were, I said, moving toward my home office. And they made a mistake. They let you see them. I sat down at my desk and woke up the monitors. The house was wired with a closed-circuit camera system that I had installed myself. It wasn't the kind you buy at a big box store. This was high-definition, low-light gear with audio pickup. I pulled up the footage from 20 minutes prior. On the screen, a gray van with mud-smeared plates rolled into the driveway. 4 men exited. I watched their movement. They didn't move like cops. They didn't clear corners. They bunched up at the door, blocking each other's lines of sight. It was sloppy. It was amateur hour. I zoomed in on the leader. He was big, wearing a black polo shirt with community security stitched on the breast in gold thread that was fraying. His badge was a generic piece of tin you could buy online for $15. But what caught my eye was his holster. It was a cheap nylon universal fit, flapping loose against his thigh. No law enforcement professional would be caught dead with gear that is unsecured. "Look at that," I muttered, pointing at the screen. "See how he's standing? His weight is on his heels. He's not ready for a fight. He's posturing. And that badge? That's plastic." Caleb leaned over my shoulder. "So they're scammers?" "They're mercenaries," I corrected. "Hired muscle. Someone sent them here to rattle us. Someone who thinks intimidation is a business strategy." I paused the video on a frame where the van was turning around. The mud on the license plate was deliberate, but they had been careless. As the van dipped into a pothole, a chunk of mud fell off, revealing the first 3 characters of the plate and the state. I noted it down. "Dad," Caleb said, his voice dropping an octave. "They knew about the vault. How did they know?" "That is the $2 million question," I said. "But we are going to find out." The sun had fully set now. The house was dark, save for the glow of the monitors. I knew they would be back. Bullies like this operate on a cycle of escalation. When the threat doesn't work, they return with force. "Go pack a bag," I told Caleb. "I'm not leaving," he shot back immediately. "This is our house. I'm not running from some rent-a-cops." "I didn't say you were leaving. I said pack a bag. We need to be ready to move if the situation goes tactical. But for now, we hold the ground." 30 minutes later, headlights swept across the front window. They were back. I watched the monitor. It was just the sedan this time. The driver's door opened, and the leader stepped out. I recognized him from the footage. Briggs. I didn't know his name yet, but his face was etched into my memory now. He walked to the front porch, alone this time, projecting an air of casual menace. He didn't knock. He rang the doorbell and held it down. I motioned for Caleb to stay back in the hallway, out of the direct line of fire if things went sideways. I walked to the door, disengaged the lock, and swung it open. Briggs was even bigger in person, smelling of stale tobacco and cheap cologne. He smirked when he saw me, looking me up and down, assessing the threat level. I was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, looking like any other middle-aged dad. He decided I was prey. "Can I help you?" I asked, my voice flat. "Mr. Sterling," Briggs said. "We met your boy earlier. Seems there was a miscommunication. I'm Chief Briggs, head of the Regional Safety Task Force. We're contracted by the HOA to ensure community compliance." "I'm not in an HOA," I said. "That's a common misconception," Briggs said, leaning against the doorframe, invading my personal space. "See, the zoning lines were redrawn last month. You're part of the Greater Valley Association now, and that means you're subject to the safety bylaws, specifically the inspection of hazardous materials." "Is that so?" "It is. Now your kid was really disrespectful earlier. Obstruction of a safety officer is a serious thing. He's fresh out of college, right? Looking for a job? It would be a shame if a criminal record for obstruction popped up on his background check. Employers hate that." It was a direct threat against my son's future. Briggs was trying to leverage Caleb's clean slate, his potential, against my compliance. I stepped out onto the porch. I didn't shove him. I just occupied the space he was standing in, forcing him to take a step back or collide with me. He stepped back. "Let me be clear," I said, my voice dropping to a register that usually made felons reconsider their life choices. "You are not a chief. You are not law enforcement. You are a trespasser on federal property. If you or your men step foot on this driveway again, I will not call the police. I will consider it a direct threat to my family, and I will respond accordingly." Briggs blinked. The smirk vanished. He hadn't expected the prey to have teeth. "You're making a mistake, pal. You don't know how things work around here. The association doesn't like non-compliance." "Get off my land," I said. "Now." Briggs stared at me for a long second, his hand twitching near his belt. Then he laughed, a hollow, nervous sound. "This is nonsense, Vason," he muttered, turning around. "You'll be hearing from us. Watch your back, Sterling." He walked back to his car, but he didn't swagger this time. He hurried. I watched his taillights disappear down the drive. I locked the door and turned to Caleb. "He threatened my record," Caleb said, his voice tight. "He tried to," I said, "but he just gave us everything we needed. He admitted they are working for an entity claiming jurisdiction over our land, and he admitted to targeting you." "What do we do?" "We wait for the boss," I said. "Briggs is just the hammer. We need to find the hand that swings it." The night passed in a tense vigil. I slept in shifts, watching the monitors. Nothing moved in the darkness, but the feeling of being watched never left. Morning broke with a deceptive calm. The sky was a brilliant blue, the birds were singing, and at 10 a.m. sharp, a black Mercedes sedan rolled up my driveway. It was sleek, polished to a mirror shine, looking completely out of place against the rugged backdrop of the woods. The driver's door opened, but the driver didn't get out. Instead, the rear passenger door swung open. A woman stepped out. She was in her late 50s, impeccably groomed, wearing a tailored light blue suit that looked like it cost more than my first car. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and she wore sunglasses that hid her eyes. She carried a leather portfolio and walked with the entitlement of royalty visiting the peasants. This was the Queen. I met her on the lawn. I wanted her away from the house, away from Caleb. She stopped 10 feet from me, removed her sunglasses, and smiled. It was a cold, practiced smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mr. Sterling," she said. Her voice was smooth, cultured, and utterly poisonous. "I am Priscilla Thorne. I believe you met my security team yesterday. Your goons, I corrected. Independent contractors, she countered effortlessly. I am the president of the Greater Valley Association. I came personally to smooth over this misunderstanding. She opened her portfolio and pulled out a document on thick, cream-colored paper. We understand that transitions can be difficult. You've lived here a long time, unregulated, but progress is inevitable. This is a formal notice of your inclusion in the association. It requires a signature acknowledging our bylaws. She extended the paper. I didn't take it. And if I don't sign? Then we are forced to assess penalties, she said, her tone light, as if discussing the weather. Retroactive fees for non-compliance, security levies, and of course the weapon safety surety bond, $5,000. Renewable monthly, for the storage of high-caliber firearms in a residential zone. To ensure the safety of the children, you understand. $5,000 a month, I repeated. Or what? You confiscate my property? We prefer the term asset forfeiture for community protection, she said. If you cannot pay the bond, the bylaws allow us to seize the assets to cover the debt. It's all quite standard. I looked at the document she was holding. I have spent decades looking at warrants, subpoenas, and court orders. I know what legal authority looks like. This was a masterpiece of fraud. May I? I asked, reaching for the paper. She handed it to me, confident in her victory. I scanned the text. It was filled with pseudo-legal jargon, pursuant to, heretofore, statutory obligation, words thrown together to sound intimidating to a layman. But my eyes went to the signature at the bottom. It claimed to be authorized by the county zoning commissioner, a man named Arthur Pendleton. Arthur Pendleton signed this? I asked. Personally, she lied without blinking. We work very closely with the county. That is interesting, I said, handing the paper back. Because Arthur Pendleton retired 5 years ago. He lives in Florida now. I played golf with him last month. It was a bluff. I hadn't played golf with him, but I knew he was retired because I had run a background check on the county officials before I bought the house. Priscilla's smile froze. For a fraction of a second, the mask slipped, and I saw the predator underneath. Clerical error, she snapped, snatching the paper back. The point remains. You are in our jurisdiction, and we have concerns about the suitability of your residency here. A man with your history, keeping dangerous weapons, refusing to integrate with the community, it raises red flags. What history is that, Priscilla? We know you're a violent man, Mr. Sterling. We know you have no visible means of employment. You sit in this house all day. We suspect you are running an illicit operation, and we will not have it in our neighborhood. She took a step closer, lowering her voice. You have a son, Caleb, bright boy. I just finished his degree. It would be tragic if he got swept up in his father's legal troubles, if he were labeled an accomplice to whatever this is. Are you threatening my family? I am offering you a lifeline, she hissed. Sell the house to the association. We will offer you a fair price, minus the penalties, of course. You take the money, you leave, and your son starts his life with a clean slate. You stay, and we will bury you under so much litigation and bad press that you will never crawl out. Why do you want the house, Priscilla? I asked. It's a modest ranch in the woods. It's not worth the effort. She laughed, a sharp barking sound. You have no idea what you are sitting on, do you? You are a squatter on a gold mine, Mr. Sterling, and I am the one holding the shovel. She put her sunglasses back on. You have 24 hours to sign the transfer agreement. After that, we stop asking nicely." She turned and walked back to her Mercedes. As she opened the door, she looked back. "Tell Caleb to drive safe. The roads can be treacherous for young drivers." She got in and drove away. I stood there for a long time, watching the dust settle. She had made a mistake, a massive one. She had hinted at the motive. A gold mine. I went back inside. Caleb was waiting in the kitchen. "She knows my name," he said. "She knows I graduated. She's done her homework," I said. "Now it's time we do ours." I went to my office and logged into the federal database. I needed to know why a woman in a light blue suit was risking felony extortion charges for a patch of land in the middle of nowhere. I pulled up the county surveyor maps, but I didn't stop there. I accessed the proposed commercial development filings, the ones that hadn't been made public yet. It took me 10 minutes to find it. A massive commercial development plan had been filed by a shell company, Blue Horizon LLC. A high-end shopping district, luxury condos, and a direct access road to the highway. And my property? My 6 acres of woods? It was right in the center of the proposed access route. Without my land, they couldn't build the road. Without the road, the project died. The estimated value of the project was $200 million. My land wasn't worth $400,000 as a home. As a commercial thoroughfare, it was worth at least $2 million. "Greed," I whispered. "It is always greed." Priscilla wasn't worried about guns. She wasn't worried about safety. She needed me gone so she could flip the land to the developers and pocket a fortune. I called Caleb into the office and showed him the map. "This is what they want," I said, tracing the line of the proposed road through our living room. "They don't care about safety. They want the dirt under our feet." "So what do we do?" Caleb asked. "Do we sell?" "If they had come to me honestly," I said, "I might have listened. But they threatened you. They sent thugs to my door. They tried to use the law as a weapon against my family." I looked at my son. "We don't sell. We dig in." Priscilla didn't wait for the 24 hours to expire. She started the war immediately. That afternoon, Caleb received an email on his phone. He turned pale and handed it to me. It was from the engineering firm where he had just secured a prestigious internship, the first step in his career. "Dear Mr. Sterling, due to information received regarding your involvement in an ongoing criminal investigation involving violent conduct and weapons charges, we are rescinding your offer of employment effective immediately. We maintain a zero-tolerance policy for workplace safety risks." "She emailed them," Caleb said, his voice trembling with rage. "She told them I'm a criminal." "She didn't just tell them," I said, reading the header. "She sent it anonymously, probably from a burner account, making it look like an official tip." Before I could respond, a tow truck rumbled up the driveway. A massive flatbed with no markings. I ran outside. The driver was already hooking chains to Caleb's sedan, which was parked legally in our driveway. "Hey!" I shouted. "Drop that car!" The driver ignored me, cranking the winch. "Repossession order," he grunted. "Non-payment of association fees." "I am not in the association," I yelled, stepping toward him. Briggs stepped out from behind the tow truck. He was holding a baton, tapping it against his palm. 2 other men were with him. "Stay back, Sterling," Briggs grinned. "Just enforcing the bylaws. We're seizing assets to cover the debt. You can pick it up at the impound lot after you pay the $5,000. Caleb ran out of the house. "That's my car! You can't take it!" "Watch me, kid," Briggs sneered. I looked at the tow truck, then at Briggs, then at my son, who had just lost his job and was now watching his car being stolen in broad daylight. This was total warfare. They were stripping us down, piece by piece. They were attacking our livelihood, our mobility, our reputation. They wanted to make us feel helpless. They wanted us to break. I grabbed Caleb's arm before he could charge Briggs. "Let it go," I said softly. "Dad, they're stealing it. Let it go." I watched them drag the car up onto the flatbed. I memorized the VIN number of the tow truck. I memorized the faces of the men. I let them drive away with my son's car. Briggs leaned out the window as they pulled away. "Tell Priscilla she says hi. Clock's ticking, old man." We stood in the empty driveway. The silence returned, but now it felt different. It felt like the calm before a hurricane. Caleb turned to me, tears of frustration in his eyes. "You just let them take it. You're a marshal. You could have stopped them. Why are we just taking this?" "We aren't taking it," I said, my voice cold and hard as steel. "We are documenting it." I turned and walked back toward the house. "Come inside, Caleb. It is time you saw what I really do." "What are we going to do?" he asked, following me. I stopped at the door and looked back at the empty spot where his car used to be. "Priscilla thinks she is fighting a homeowner," I said. "She thinks she is fighting a tired old man who just wants to retire. She has no idea she just declared war on the U.S. Marshals Service." I opened the door. "Tomorrow, we will stop playing defense. Tomorrow, we will go on the hunt." I walked into my office and did something I hadn't done in years. I opened the bottom drawer of my desk and pulled out a heavy, black, secure phone. It was a direct line to the district office. I dialed a number. "Operations," a voice answered on the first ring. "This is Chief Deputy Sterling," I said. "Authorization code Delta 9 X-ray. I have a situation involving the impersonation of federal officers, felony extortion, and the targeting of a federal agent's family. I need a tactical team on standby." "Copy that, Chief. What are your orders?" "We are going to set a trap," I said, looking at the map of my property on the wall. "And we are going to catch the Queen." I hung up the phone and looked at Caleb. He was watching me, wide-eyed. "Dad?" "Pack that bag, son," I said. "But not for running. Tonight we turn this house into a fortress. Tomorrow, Priscilla Thorne learns exactly what happens when you try to take a son from his father." I reached for the gun safe in the corner, the real one. I spun the dial. The heavy steel door swung open, revealing the tools of my trade. "Let's get to work." The heavy steel door of the vault swung open, revealing rows of tactical gear, communication devices, and the kind of weaponry that is not sold at the local sporting goods store. I didn't hand Caleb a weapon. He was a civilian, and I wasn't going to turn my son into a combatant in a legal gray zone. Instead, I handed him an encrypted radio earpiece and a small black body camera. "Put this on," I instructed. "Clip it to your belt. Cover it with your shirt, but make sure the lens has a clear line of sight through the buttonhole. Tonight, you are the bait, but you are also the primary witness." Caleb clipped the device on, his hands steady. The fear from earlier had evaporated, replaced by a cold, hard focus. He was an engineer. He understood structures, stress points, and breaking points. He was beginning to see this situation not as a frightening assault, but as a problem to be solved with precision. "What is the play?" he asked. "We need them to commit," I said, pulling a tactical vest over my head and securing the Velcro straps. "Right now, they have committed harassment, theft, and impersonation. Those are serious, but they are state-level crimes. Briggs and Priscilla have good lawyers. They could spin the theft as a civil repossession dispute. They could spin the harassment as neighborhood watch zealotry. We need a federal felony. We need something undeniable. Kidnapping, Caleb said, the realization dawning on him. Attempted kidnapping of a federal agent's family member, I corrected. Conspiracy to obstruct federal justice, and assault on a federal officer. Once they cross that line, there is no lawyer on earth who can save them. We spent the next 3 hours turning the house into a trap. I adjusted the angles of the exterior cameras to cover the blind spots. I unlocked the side gate, creating an inviting path of least resistance. I parked my truck around the back, hidden in the tree line, making the house look vulnerable, undefended. At 3 a.m., the first test came. It wasn't Briggs. It was worse. The silence of the woods was shattered by the wail of sirens. Not the chirping of a security alarm, but the heavy, oscillating roar of emergency response vehicles. Blue and red lights washed over the living room walls, strobing through the blinds. "Dad?" Caleb whispered from his position on the couch. "Stay down," I commanded. I moved to the window, keeping my body shielded by the wall. 3 county police cruisers were screeching to a halt at the bottom of the driveway. Officers were spilling out, weapons drawn, taking cover behind their doors. A megaphone crackled to life. "Occupants of 420 Ridge Road, come out with your hands up. We have reports of an active shooter and a hostage situation." Swatting. Priscilla had escalated. She had called 911 claiming there was a violent crisis at my address. She wanted the local police to kick down my door and do her dirty work. She was hoping for a tragedy. She was hoping I would come out holding a weapon and get cut down in the confusion. "Holy cow," Caleb breathed. "She's trying to get us killed." "Stay here," I said. "Do not move. Do not show your hands." I walked to the front door. I didn't run, I didn't crouch. I moved with the deliberate slowness of a man who knows exactly what he is doing. I turned on the porch light, illuminating myself clearly. I kept my empty hands held high, palms open, fingers spread. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. "My driver's license is in my back pocket," I shouted, my voice projecting clearly over the idling engines. "My badge is in my front left pocket. I am unarmed. I am a federal officer." The tension in the air was thick enough to choke on. I could see the glint of rifle barrels leveled at my chest. One twitch, one misunderstanding, and it would be over. "Slowly!" a sergeant yelled from behind a cruiser. "On your knees!" I complied, sinking to my knees, interlacing my fingers behind my head. "Check my left pocket, Sergeant. Leather wallet. Gold star." 2 officers advanced, moving in a tactical stack. They approached me cautiously. The lead officer reached into my jacket, pulled out the leather folio, and flipped it open. The beam of his flashlight hit the badge. United States Marshal Service, Chief Deputy. The officer froze. He looked at the badge, then at me, then back at the badge. He lowered his weapon immediately. "Stand down," he yelled to his team. "We have code 4, blue on blue, stand down." The tension snapped. The officers lowered their rifles. The sergeant walked up to me, helping me to my feet, his face pale. "Sir," he stammered. The dispatch. We got a call. A woman screaming. Said her husband had snapped. Said he had a gun to her son's head." "My wife passed away 3 years ago, Sergeant," I said quietly, brushing the dust off my jeans. "My son is inside, safe. This was a false report filed by a hostile party attempting to weaponize your department." The sergeant's face hardened. He was a good cop. I could see it in his eyes. He realized he had been played. He realized he had almost shot a federal agent because of a lie. "Who called it in?" I asked. "Burner phone," the sergeant said, disgusted. "Untraceable, but the caller ID pinged a cell tower near the lake." "The lake," I repeated, "right where the black Mercedes was heading." "Sir, do you want us to sweep the area? Do you want protective custody?" "No," I said. "If you stay here, they win. They want you to arrest me, or they want me to flee. I need you to leave. I need you to clear the call as a hoax and depart. Make it look like you found nothing." "Sir?" "I have a tactical operation in play," I said, my voice dropping. "The people who made this call are coming back. And when they do, I need them to think I am alone and vulnerable. Can you give me a wide perimeter? 5 miles. No patrols." The sergeant looked at me. He saw the badge, but more importantly, he saw the look in my eye. He nodded. "We were never here," he said. "Good hunting, Marshal." The police withdrew. The silence returned to the valley. But now it was charged with kinetic energy. Priscilla had played her ace. She had tried to use the police as a hit squad. Now she would assume I was shaken, terrified, perhaps even detained. She would send in the cleaners. "She really did it," Caleb said as I walked back inside. He was standing by the window, watching the taillights fade. "She tried to swat us." "It is a federal crime," I said. "Reporting a false emergency resulting in a law enforcement response. Add it to the list." But she missed. "What now?" "Now," I said, checking my watch. It was 4:15 a.m. We bait the hook. We spent the daylight hours staging the scene. I had Caleb pack his car, the rental I had arranged to be dropped off at the end of the road before dawn. We piled boxes by the front door, visible through the window. We made it look like we were breaking, like we were fleeing in a panic. I sent a text to the operations team I had activated. "Target likely to move at dusk. Hold position at Bravo Point. Wait for my signal." The reply came instantly. "Copy. Standing by." The sun began to set, painting the sky in bruises of purple and red. It was time. "Go to the garage," I told Caleb. "Open the main door halfway. Act like you are loading the last of the gear. Make noise. Be visible." "Where will you be?" "I will be the shadow," I said. I moved into the darkened corner of the garage, behind a stack of crates, cloaked in the gloom. I controlled my breathing, lowering my heart rate. I became part of the stillness. At 7:45 p.m., the van returned. It didn't come up the driveway this time. It rolled across the lawn, headlights off, tires tearing up the grass. They weren't pretending to be official anymore. This was a raid. The van screeched to a halt 10 yards from the open garage door. The side door slid open with a metallic rasp. 4 men poured out. Briggs was in the lead, holding a baton. The other 3 had zip ties and tasers. They weren't here to talk. They were here to extract. Priscilla's Mercedes pulled up behind the van, staying back, the general observing from the rear lines. She rolled down her window, her face illuminated by the dash lights. She was smiling. "Grab him!" she shouted, her voice shrill with triumph. "Grab the boy! We'll trade him for the deed!" It was the sentence I had been waiting for. The undeniable proof of intent. Briggs charged into the garage. "You're coming with us, Junior!" Caleb stood his ground by the workbench. He didn't run. He raised his hands, palms out in the universal gesture of surrender, ensuring the body camera caught every angle of the aggression. "I am not going anywhere," Caleb yelled. "You are trespassing." "I'm making a citizen's arrest," Briggs roared, lunging forward. "You're a danger to the community." The other 3 men fanned out, flanking Caleb. One of them grabbed Caleb's arm, twisting it behind his back. Caleb yelped in pain. "Get the zip ties," Briggs barked. "Throw him in the van. We'll take him to the processing center in the basement." They had him. They had laid hands on him. The crime was complete. If you're still here at this point, you know that when they target a man's family, they aren't just crossing a line. They're signing a warrant. I stepped out of the shadows. "Drop him," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but in the acoustic chamber of the garage, it sounded like a hammer striking an anvil. Briggs spun around, his eyes widening. He hadn't checked the corners. He had assumed the father was cowering inside the house. "Sterling!" Briggs sneered, trying to recover his bravado. "Back off, old man. Unless you want to get hurt too. We're taking the kid into protective custody." I said drop him. "Get him!" Briggs ordered his men. "Take them both." 2 of the mercenaries released Caleb and rushed me. They were big, heavy with muscle, used to brawling in bars. They expected a scuffle. They expected me to swing wild. I didn't brawl, I didn't swing. The first man threw a haymaker punch. I stepped inside the arc, my movement fluid and precise. I drove the heel of my palm into his chin, snapping his head back, disrupting his equilibrium. As he stumbled, I swept his lead leg. He hit the concrete with a bone-jarring thud and didn't move. The second man hesitated, seeing his partner drop. That hesitation was his downfall. I closed the distance in a single stride. I grabbed his wrist, applying a rotational lock that forced him down. He screamed as he hit his knees, a precise strike to the neck, and he slumped forward, unconscious. Briggs stared at me, his baton wavering. The third man, still holding Caleb, let go and backed away, hands raised. "Who are you?" Briggs whispered. "You fight like you aren't a civilian." "Put the baton down, Briggs," I said, walking toward him. "Last warning." Briggs roared and swung the steel rod at my head. It was a lethal strike. If it had connected, it would have shattered my skull. I ducked under the swing, feeling the wind of it pass over my hair. I drove my shoulder into his solar plexus, doubling him over. As he gasped for air, I spun him around, kicking the back of his knee. He collapsed. I pinned him firmly to the ground and zip-tied his hands behind his back with his own restraints. It was over in 30 seconds. 4 men down. 0 shots fired. I stood up, adjusting my vest. Caleb was leaning against the workbench, breathing hard, but unharmed. "You okay?" I asked. "I'm good," Caleb said, looking at the unconscious men on the floor. "That was awesome." Outside, an engine roared. Priscilla. She had seen her team fall. She was trying to run. I sprinted out of the garage. The Mercedes was reversing wildly, tearing up the turf. She was trying to turn around, aiming for the driveway. I didn't chase her. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small remote. I pressed the button. At the end of the driveway, massive steel bollards, the ones I had installed the day after I moved in, disguised as decorative planters, shot up from the ground. The Mercedes slammed on its brakes, skidding to a halt inches from the steel barrier. She was trapped. I walked down the driveway. Priscilla was frantically locking the doors, fumbling with her phone. I tapped on the driver's side window with my knuckles. She screamed. She looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. She rolled down the window a crack. "You're dead, Sterling," she shrieked. "My husband is a judge. I'll have you buried. I'll say you ambushed my security team. I'll say you tried to kill me." "Get out of the car, Priscilla. I am the president of the association. You have no authority over me." I reached into my vest pocket. I pulled out the leather folio. I flipped it open and pressed it against the glass. The gold star of the U.S. Marshals Service gleamed in the moonlight. Priscilla stopped screaming. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Her eyes went wide, fixing on the badge. She read the inscription. Chief Deputy. You're... Open the door, I said. Now. She unlocked the door with a trembling hand. She stepped out, her legs shaky. Her light blue suit was wrinkled, her perfect hair coming undone. You can't be, she whispered. We checked. You were just a retiree. Nobody. You checked the public records, I said. My file is classified. You didn't find me because I didn't want to be found, until you decided to threaten my son. It was just a misunderstanding, she stammered, switching tactics, trying to find a charm that wasn't there. We were just concerned about the property values, the weapons. You ordered a kidnapping, I said, my voice cold. I have it on audio, I have it on video. You attempted to extort a federal officer. You filed false police reports. You committed wire fraud. And you trespassed on federal property. Please, she begged, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. We can work this out. The land. You can have a share. The development. There's millions. Bribe, I said. Add it to the list. I keyed my radio. Delta 9, move in. Suddenly the woods around us exploded with light. Floodlights snapped on from the tree line. 4 black SUVs roared up the driveway, bypassing the bollards I had just lowered. Men and women in full tactical gear with U.S. Marshals emblazoned on their chests poured out of the vehicles. This wasn't the local PD. This was the federal cavalry. Priscilla looked around, spinning in a circle, watching her empire collapse. She saw the agents securing Briggs and his men. She saw the evidence technicians photographing the van. She saw the end of her life as she knew it. You're not the HOA president anymore, Priscilla, I said, as an agent stepped forward with handcuffs. You are a federal prisoner. The agent spun her around. The click of the cuffs was the most satisfying sound I had heard in years. I have rights, she wailed as they marched her toward the SUV. I know people. You have the right to remain silent, the agent recited, guiding her into the back seat. I suggest you use it. The fallout was swift and brutal. Within 48 hours, the U.S. Attorney's Office had unsealed an indictment that read like a textbook on organized crime. The Greater Valley Association wasn't a registered HOA. It was a shell company set up by Priscilla and her husband to bully rural landowners into selling their properties for pennies on the dollar. They found the files in her office. Dozens of victims, seniors intimidated into nursing homes, families harassed until they fled. They had been running this scam for a decade, amassing thousands of acres which they then flipped to commercial developers for massive profits. The $200 million road project? It was real. And Priscilla had promised the developers she could deliver my land. She had taken a deposit she couldn't pay back. Briggs turned state's evidence within an hour of being put in a holding cell. He sang like a canary. He implicated Priscilla in 3 counts of arson and countless acts of extortion. He admitted that the safety ordinances were fabricated documents printed in Priscilla's basement. Caleb's car was found in an impound lot 2 counties over. It was returned to us, fully detailed, courtesy of the impound owner who wanted nothing to do with a federal RICO case. But the sweetest victory came a week later. I was in the kitchen, brewing coffee, when Caleb walked in. He was holding a letter. Read this, Handing it to me, it was from the engineering firm, the one that had rescinded his offer. Dear Mr. Sterling, we have been contacted by the United States Department of Justice regarding the malicious and false information provided to us concerning your character. We offer our deepest and most sincere apologies for our rush to judgment. We would like to reinstate your offer of employment, with a 10% increase in the starting salary and a signing bonus, as a gesture of our goodwill. They want me back, Caleb said, grinning. Do you want to go back? They doubled the signing bonus, Caleb laughed. Yeah, I think I'll take it. But I'm going to make them wait a few days before I say yes. Let them sweat. Good man. We walked out onto the front porch. The morning air was crisp. The black SUVs were gone. The fake cops were in federal prison. Priscilla was facing 20 years without parole. The driveway was empty, save for my truck and Caleb's car. The woods were quiet again. You know, Caleb said, leaning against the railing, you never told me you were a chief deputy. I thought you were just logistics. Logistics is part of it, I said, taking a sip of coffee. Moving bad people to places where they can't hurt anyone else is a logistical challenge. Caleb held out his fist. We make a good team. I bumped my fist against his. The best. We stood there for a moment, watching the sun rise over the trees that were still ours, on land that no one would ever try to take again. The blue jay that nested in the oak tree swooped down, landing on the feeder. It chirped loudly, claiming its territory. Hey, Dad? Yeah? Next time we have visitors, can I use the zip ties? I laughed. Let's hope there isn't a next time. But if there is, sure. Justice isn't always swift. Sometimes it hides in the woods, waiting for the right moment to strike. Priscilla Thorne thought she was the law. She thought a light blue suit and a fake title gave her the right to destroy families. She learned the hard way that true power doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to be bullied. True power protects. Priscilla learned that true power protects. If you enjoyed this story of justice served, please follow for more. See you in the next one.